In the visual reconciliation technique, the goal is to understand the correlations between multiple descriptor spaces of data objects. For example, in this case, we have climate model structure data on the left and model output data on the right. Model structure data is described by Boolean parameters. For example, these are different criteria for simulating processes like photosynthesis, vegetation, etc., which can be either present or absent. So presence is purple color, gray means absent, and the color gradient here indicates the degree to which a criteria is being implemented by a model or not. So darker red means most of the models implement that, yellow means most of the models or none of the models implement that criteria. So what can we do as part of the reconciliation technique? We can start creating groups on the output, and we see the rows being reordered to reflect those groups on the model structure side. So we can keep creating groups, and we see that the color of the lines, so blue colored lines belong to the same group as indicated by the border here. So we have three groups, orange, blue, and green, which we can also see on the model structure side. We can also do the complementary operation on the model structure side. Before that, we can reorder the columns to give a better sorting from high degree of implementation to low degree of implementation of the criteria. And we can create groups. So in this case, this criteria is being implemented by all of these models, and only the GTEC model does not implement that criteria, so we have two groups. But the interesting part is we can select groups of our interest. We can also do one more operation. We can ask the system to cluster the lines based on their correlation. So we can produce three clusters here, and as we can see that based on the seasonal cycle or the correlation of the lines, we have three groups, orange, green, and blue. And these groups are again reflected on the model structure side. But we can also manually select lines. So we are selecting the Vegas and biome models, and we are asking the model's structure side to give us those set of criteria which are important to differentiate biome and Vegas from all the other models with respect to their output. So we're creating models, selecting models that seem to be similar with respect to their output, and we are trying to find the subset of criteria which can create the similar groups on the model structure side. So let's say optimize weights, and we see that the stomatal conductance criteria, which is implemented by biome and Vegas, but not at all implemented by all of these models, is the most important criteria to give us that group on the model output side. So if we click select this criteria, it produces the exact same grouping that we are getting from the optimization. So the optimization tells us these are the important criteria, but only after selecting this we can see what's the effect on the model output side, which we see is the same effect as we had selected, right? So it's a perfect optimization, but it might not be the case every time. So in this case, we have the model output for the North American tropical region, and in the previous case it was for a polar region. So if we select two models here, in this case we've selected SIP3 and SIP-CASA, as we can see here, and then we ask the model structure to be optimized, and it tells us that these criteria are important in creating these groups on the output side. But if we select just this criteria, we see that class CTEM is also in this same group as SIP3 and SIP-CASA, but we had originally wanted to see SIP3 and SIP-CASA to be in one group and all the other models in another group. So let's from these criteria, let's select some more to see if if we can get that kind of grouping. So we select these three criteria. Okay, now we see that with respect to this selection, SIP3 and SIP-CASA are in one group because only SIP3 and SIP-CASA are the two models which implement all these three criteria. And we can see that so that's the selection which we wanted, right? Because we wanted SIP3 and SIP-CASA to be in one group and the other models to be in a different group. The additional thing which is done by the optimization, which is only an approximation because this exact structures might not exist to create the same groups on the output side, is to split that big group into different subgroups. So a better way to see this is to look at the small multiples. As you can see here, the SIP3 and SIP-CASA are kind of similar with respect to their GPP output. And in most of the other cases, there is some degree of variability where there are differences in the degree to which they implement or don't implement these three criteria, right? So SIP3 and SIP-CASA are the only two models which implement all the three criteria. So in this way, we can reconcile the model outputs with model structure and vice versa for the different descriptor sets that is time-varying output data for the climate models and the binary input data or binary parameter space of the model structure.